Imagine being told your entire life that dragons, unicorns, and humans were all just fairy tales. Bedtime stories to scare children or fill them with wonder. Now imagine discovering that while dragons and unicorns remained in the realm of fantasy, humans were terrifyingly real. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Coalition believed humans were nothing more than ancient legends. Ghost stories whispered about a mythical species that could survive in impossible conditions, fight without fear, and refuse to surrender even when facing certain death. They were the boogeyman parents used to frighten misbehaving younglings. Behave, or the humans will come for you in the dark. But legends have a way of becoming reality when you least expect them. And sometimes, when an entire galaxy is on the brink of destruction, myths become the only hope for salvation. This is the story of how humanity stepped out of legend and into the greatest war the galaxy had ever seen and changed everything forever. Commander Zephyr Kane pressed her four-fingered hand against the cold metal of the observation deck's viewport, watching another coalition fleet burn in the void of space. The Devourer ships moved through their formations like apex predators through a school of frightened fish, their dark hulls seeming to absorb the very light around them. Each enemy vessel was roughly the size of a coalition dreadnought, but where coalition ships required crews of thousands, the Devourers operated with a hive-mind efficiency that made them nearly unstoppable. Status report. Kane commanded, her crystalline skin shifting from its usual pale blue to a deeper shade that indicated stress among her species, the Volari. Around the bridge of the Coalition flagship Harmony's Edge, officers from a dozen different species worked frantically at their stations, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and harmonic tones. "We've lost the entire 7th Fleet," reported Lieutenant Commander Threx, his reptilian features grim. "Admiral Voss went down with his ship, just like the others. The Devourers aren't taking prisoners, Commander. They're not even salvaging our technology. They're just consuming everything." Kane closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of command pressing down on her shoulders. In the 18 months since the Devourers had appeared from the dark spaces between galaxies, the Coalition had lost more ships and personnel than in the previous century of conflicts combined. These invaders didn't communicate, didn't negotiate, and didn't seem to want anything except total annihilation of all sentient life. The Coalition represented 43 different species, each contributing their unique strengths to a unified defense force. The Volari provided exceptional tactical minds and leadership abilities. The Kroknari brought raw strength and fearlessness in battle. The Etherian contributed their mastery of energy manipulation and shielding technology. The Zephyrians offered incredible speed and precision. Together, they had maintained peace and prosperity across thousands of star systems for over a millennium. But none of it seemed to matter against the Devourers. "Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from Coalition Command," announced Communications Officer Lyra, her antenna-like appendages twitching with urgency. "It's Admiral Cortez himself." On screen, Kane ordered, straightening her uniform. The main display flickered to life, showing the weathered face of Admiral Marcus Cortez, one of the Coalition's most respected strategic minds. Behind him, Kane could see the chaos of the command center on Nexus Prime, the Coalition's capital world. "Commander Kane," Cortez began without preamble, "I'm afraid I have difficult news. Our intelligence suggests the Devourers have identified Nexus Prime's location. Their main fleet is moving toward the core systems, and our projections indicate they'll reach us within 72 standard hours." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems. Nexus Prime wasn't just the Coalition's capital. It was home to over 12 billion souls from dozens of species. The cultural and technological heart of their civilization resided there, along with the greatest libraries, art galleries, and research facilities in known space. "What are your orders, sir?" Kane asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "We're implementing Protocol Omega," Cortez replied gravely. All remaining fleets are to fall back to Nexus Prime for a final stand. It's not ideal, Commander, but we're out of options. We've tried everything. Concentrated firepower, hit-and-run tactics, even attempting to communicate with them. Nothing works. They just keep coming, and our losses are unsustainable. Kane nodded slowly. Protocol Omega was exactly what it sounded like. The last resort. Every remaining coalition ship would gather at Nexus Prime for one final battle. Win or lose, it would determine the fate of their civilization. Understood, Admiral. How many ships will we have for the defense? Including your task force, approximately 800 vessels of various classes. I know it sounds like a lot, but intelligence estimates the Devourers are bringing over 3,000 ships. The odds. Cortez's voice trailed off. The odds don't matter, Kane replied firmly. We'll fight with everything we have. For our homes, our families, and our way of life. As the transmission ended, Kane turned back to her crew. She could see the fear in their eyes, but also determination. That was something she'd always admired about the Coalition. Despite their differences, when faced with extinction, they stood together. Navigation, set course for Nexus Prime. Maximum speed, she commanded. Engineering, I want every system running at peak efficiency. Tactical, begin running defensive scenarios for the capital system. We have work to do. As the Harmony's Edge and its escort fleet jumped to hyperspace, Kane found herself thinking about the old legends her grandmother used to tell her when she was young. Stories of impossible beings called humans who could endure any hardship, fight any battle, and never surrender. Her grandmother claimed they weren't just stories, but historical accounts from the early days of space exploration. Silly old tales. Kane murmured to herself, but even as she said it, she found herself wishing there was some truth to them. The Coalition could use a miracle right about now. 3 days later, the massive defensive fleet assembled around Nexus Prime presented an impressive sight. 800 ships of every class and configuration formed defensive formations around the planet and its orbital installations. The diversity was staggering. Sleek Etherian vessels that seemed to be made of crystallized energy, massive Kroknari dreadnoughts bristling with weapons, agile Zephyrian fighters that moved like metallic hummingbirds, and dozens of other designs representing the ingenuity of 43 different species. But as impressive as it looked, Kane knew it wouldn't be enough. The mathematics were stark and unforgiving. Even if every Coalition ship performed perfectly, they were still outnumbered nearly 4-1 by an enemy that had proven superior in every engagement. Commander, called out Sensor Officer Nell, her feline features alert, we're detecting hyperspace signatures at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts approaching fast. Here they come, Kane said quietly. All ships, battle stations. Today we fight for everything we hold dear. The first wave of Devourer ships dropped out of hyperspace like black daggers against the star field. Then, the second wave appeared, and the third. Within minutes, over 3,000 enemy vessels had taken position at the system's edge, their dark hulls seeming to absorb all light that touched them. They moved with perfect coordination, no wasted motion, no hesitation. Admiral Cortez is broadcasting to all ships, Lyra announced. Cortez's voice filled the bridge, carried simultaneously to every Coalition vessel in the system. Warriors of the Coalition, today we face our greatest challenge. Behind us lies everything we've built, everyone we love. Before us stands an enemy that seeks to erase our very existence. But we are not helpless. We represent the combined strength, courage, and determination of 43 different worlds. We have faced impossible odds before and emerged victorious. Today, we do not fight just for ourselves. We fight for the future of all sentient life in this galaxy. Give them everything you have. Make our ancestors proud. Coalition fleet attack. The battle began with a thunderous exchange of weapons fire that lit up space like a new star being born. Coalition vessels unleashed everything in their arsenals. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, graviton pulses, and energy beams that could slice through asteroid fields. The Devourers responded with their own terrifying weapons, dark energy lances that seemed to drain the life from anything they touched. Kane watched as the battle unfolded on her tactical display, coordinating her task force's movements while trying to make sense of the chaos. The Coalition forces fought brilliantly, using every advantage their diversity provided. Etherian ships created energy barriers that protected smaller vessels, while Kroknari dreadnoughts absorbed tremendous punishment and kept fighting. Zephyrian fighters wove through the battle at impossible speeds, striking weak points and drawing enemy fire away from larger ships. But it wasn't enough. For every Devourer ship destroyed, 2 Coalition vessels went dark. The enemy's coordination was flawless, their weapons devastatingly effective, and they seemed to learn and adapt to Coalition tactics in real time. "Commander, we've lost contact with Admiral Cortez," Threx reported, his voice strained. The command ship took a direct hit. All departments are reporting critical damage across the fleet. Kane felt her heart sink as she watched the tactical display. Red icons representing destroyed Coalition ships outnumbered the few blue markers indicating confirmed Devourer kills by an alarming margin. At this rate, they had perhaps an hour before their defensive line collapsed entirely. "Sir," Nell called out urgently, "I'm detecting new hyperspace signatures. More Devourer reinforcements incoming." Kane was about to give the order to prepare for the final wave when Nell's voice changed, becoming confused and excited. "Wait, Commander. These signatures are different. They're not Devourer ships. I'm reading approximately 200 vessels. Unknown configuration. Pirates? Mercenaries?" Kane asked, though she couldn't imagine any independent force being foolish enough to enter this battle. "I don't think so, sir. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. They're primitive in some ways, but they're technologies I've never seen before." The unknown ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, and Kane's breath caught in her throat. These vessels were clearly built for war, but their design philosophy was completely different from anything in Coalition space. Where Coalition ships were elegant and specialized, these newcomers were brutal and practical. They looked like they'd been built in shipyards that doubled as weapons factories, all angles and armor and visible gun turrets. "Commander," Lyra's voice was barely above a whisper. "We're receiving a transmission from the lead ship. Audio only, translating now." A voice filled the bridge, speaking in a language that the translation computers struggled to process before finally converting it to standard Coalition speech. The tone was confident, almost casual, despite the massive battle raging around them. "Coalition fleet, this is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense Force. We've been monitoring your situation and decided to lend a hand. Sorry we're late to the party, but traffic was hell getting here. We'll take the left flank. Try to keep up." Kane felt her legs go weak. Terran, human. The mythical species from ancient legends was not only real, but had somehow found their way to this battle at their darkest hour. She watched in amazement as the human ships moved into combat formation with smooth efficiency. "Sir, what are your orders?" Threx asked, clearly as shocked as everyone else. Kane shook her head, trying to process what was happening. "Signal the human fleet. Tell them we welcome their assistance, and we'll coordinate our attacks with theirs. And patch me through to all Coalition ships. They need to know about this." As her words were broadcast across the battered fleet, Kane heard gasps and excited chatter from bridge crews throughout the system. The psychological impact was immediate and profound. The mythical humans had appeared just when all hope seemed lost. It was like having legendary heroes step out of ancient stories to fight alongside them. The human ships engaged the Devourer forces with a ferocity that took everyone by surprise. Their weapons were kinetic rather than energy-based, firing massive projectiles at incredible velocities. Instead of elegant beam weapons, they used what appeared to be oversized railguns and missile systems that created spectacular explosions. But it was their tactics that truly amazed the Coalition forces. Where every other species in the galaxy had developed careful, calculated approaches to warfare designed to minimize losses, the humans fought like they had nothing to lose. They didn't retreat when outnumbered or outgunned. Instead, they seemed to become more dangerous the worse their situation became. Kane watched one human destroyer, its hull scarred and bleeding atmosphere, ram itself directly into a Devourer heavy cruiser 3 times its size. The explosion took out both ships and severely damaged 2 others nearby. Instead of being horrified by the sacrifice, the other human ships seemed inspired by it, fighting even more aggressively. "My ancestors preserve us," whispered Nell. "They're actually pushing the Devourers back." And they were. For the first time since the war began, Coalition sensors showed Devourer ships retreating from active combat. Not in an organized withdrawal, but actual retreat under pressure. The human vessels fought with a reckless abandon that somehow worked, creating gaps in the enemy formation that Coalition forces quickly exploited. The tide of battle was turning, and Kane found herself believing, for the first time in months, that they might actually survive this encounter. The humans weren't just real, they were everything the legends claimed, and more. Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the TDS Indomitable, watching the tactical display with the practiced eye of someone who had spent 20 years fighting humanity's enemies. At 45, she had gray streaking through her black hair and scars on her hand from a boarding action 3 years ago, but her dark eyes remained sharp and calculating. The bridge around her was a study in functional efficiency. No elegant curves or aesthetic considerations, just pure military pragmatism. "Status report," she commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had earned her rank through combat rather than politics. "We've broken their left flank, Admiral," reported Captain Torres, her tactical officer. Commodore Jackson's destroyer squadron just punched through their second line. The Coalition forces are following up and exploiting the breakthrough." Chin smiled grimly. She'd been monitoring Coalition communications for the past 6 months, ever since humanity's long-range scouts had detected the massive space battle taking place in what their star charts call the Andromeda Sector. The decision to intervene hadn't been easy, but when faced with the choice between revealing humanity's existence and watching an entire civilization get wiped out, the choice had been clear. "What's our casualty count?" she asked. 14 ships lost, 37 damaged, but still fighting. "Better than we expected. Honestly, these Devourer ships are tough, but their tactics are predictable. They fight like machines." Chin nodded. That had been her assessment as well. The Devourers were powerful and coordinated, but they lacked the unpredictability that made human tactics so effective. They adapted quickly to conventional strategies, but humans had never been particularly conventional. "Admiral," called out Communications Officer Liu, "we're receiving a priority message from the Coalition flagship. Commander Zephyr Kane is requesting permission to come aboard for a face-to-face meeting." "Granted. Have her shuttled over. And Liu, make sure our guest quarters are prepared. Something tells me this war isn't over yet." 30 minutes later, Chin found herself in the Indomitable's conference room, studying the alien commander who had requested this meeting. Commander Kane was unlike anything in human historical records. Roughly humanoid, but with crystalline blue skin, 4-fingered hands, and eyes that seemed to shift color with her emotions. Despite her alien appearance, Chun could see intelligence and determination in those eyes, qualities she respected regardless of species. "Admiral Chun," Kane began, her voice carrying a musical quality that the translation system couldn't quite capture. "I want to thank you for your intervention. Without your fleet's arrival, we would have lost everything today." "Don't thank me yet, Commander. This battle isn't over. My sensors are showing Devourer reinforcements massing at 3 different hyperspace jump points. They're planning something big." Kane's skin shifted to a deeper blue, which Chun was beginning to recognize as a sign of stress. "How many ships are we talking about?" "Conservative estimate? About 5,000. They're bringing everything they have." The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Even with the human fleet, They were still outnumbered by an enemy that had proven superior to coalition forces in every previous engagement. Chen could see the despair starting to creep into Kane's expression, and she understood it. By human standards, the situation was hopeless. But humans had never been particularly good at recognizing hopeless situations. Commander, before we discuss strategy, I need to ask you something. In your historical records, your legends, what do they say about humans? Kane looked puzzled by the question. The old stories say humans were warriors who couldn't be defeated because they refused to accept defeat. They were said to be able to survive in environments that would kill other species, to fight when injured beyond reason, and to find ways to win battles that should have been impossible. But they were just stories, myths to inspire courage in difficult times. What if I told you the stories were true? I would say that's impossible. No species could be that resilient, that stubborn. Chin smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. Commander, in the last 300 years, humanity has survived 7 different extinction-level events. 3 alien invasions, 2 civil wars that destroyed entire star systems, a plague that killed 60% of our population, and an AI uprising that turned our own technology against us. Each time, we were told surrender was the logical choice. Each time, we refused. She stood and moved to the conference room's viewport, looking out at the aftermath of the battle. Debris fields marked where ships had died, but both human and coalition vessels were already moving into defensive positions for the next attack. The Devourers make the same mistake everyone makes when fighting humans. They assume we think like they do, that we calculate odds, and make rational decisions about when to quit. But humans don't think that way. When faced with extinction, we don't surrender. We get angry. Kane joined her at the viewport. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we stop fighting a defensive war and start fighting a human war. These Devourers want to destroy everything? Fine. Let's give them a war they'll never forget. Over the next several hours, Chen outlined her plan to a gathering of coalition commanders who had been shuttled over from various surviving ships. The conference room had been reconfigured to accommodate different species. Atmospheric adjustments for the aquatic Delphians, gravitational modifications for the low Gravitherians, and temperature controls for the cold-adapted Glacians. The plan was, by coalition standards, completely insane. You want to do what? Admiral Vex of the Kroknari Defense Force asked, his reptilian features showing complete bewilderment. Admiral Chun, with respect, what you're describing isn't a battle plan. It's a suicide mission. No, Admiral, it's a human battle plan. There's a difference, though I admit it can be hard to see from the outside. Chen activated the holographic display, showing the current tactical situation. The Devourers are bringing 5,000 ships because they've learned that overwhelming force works against coalition tactics. They're right, it does. But they're assuming we'll fight the same way you've been fighting for the past 18 months. The display shifted, showing a different formation. Instead of meeting them head-on, we're going to split our forces. Half our fleet will engage them directly, drawing their attention and making them think we're fighting conventionally. The other half will use the battle as cover to implement Operation Broken Arrow. And what exactly is Operation Broken Arrow? Asked Commander Thale, a spindly Etherian whose energy-based physiology made him shimmer like a mirage. Chen's expression became deadly serious. We're going to capture one of their ships, learn how their technology works, and then turn it against them. The science teams on my ship have been analyzing the wreckage from today's battle. Devourer technology is incredibly advanced, but it all seems to be networked together through some kind of quantum communication system. You're talking about hijacking their command structure, Kane said slowly, beginning to understand the implications. Exactly. If we can get control of even one of their heavy cruisers, we might be able to disrupt their coordination, maybe even turn their own ships against each other. It's never been attempted before, but then again, no one's ever tried to board a Devourer ship during active combat. The room fell silent as the assembled commanders absorbed the proposal. It was audacious, reckless, and potentially catastrophic. It was also, several of them were beginning to realize, exactly the kind of unpredictable move that might actually work. The boarding action alone would be a nightmare, pointed out Captain Iris of the Zephyrian Strike Force. We don't know anything about the internal layout of their ships, their security measures, or even if the atmosphere is breathable. That's why we're using human boarding teams, Chen replied calmly. Humans can survive in hostile environments longer than most species, and we have a lot of experience with ship-to-ship combat. Plus, we're expendable. What do you mean expendable? Kane asked sharply. Commander, the Coalition represents 43 different species with billions of people. Humanity is one species with about 8 billion people total. If we lose every human ship in this battle, but save your civilization, that's an acceptable trade-off. The casual way Chun discussed the potential extinction of her entire species shocked the assembled aliens. This was exactly the kind of thinking that made humans legendary, the willingness to sacrifice everything for a principle or a cause. Admiral, Vex said slowly, in Kroknari culture, we honor warriors who die in battle. But what you're describing goes beyond courage. It's insane, Chun suggested. Yeah, probably, but it's also human. And right now, human insanity might be the only thing that can save this galaxy. The next 18 hours were a whirlwind of preparation. Human technical teams worked alongside Coalition engineers to modify boarding pods for the assault, while tactical specialists from both fleets coordinated the complex battle plan. The diversity of Coalition species provided unexpected advantages. Etherian energy manipulation could help disable Devourer shields, Zephyrian speed, and agility made them perfect for hit-and-run attacks, and Kroknari heavy assault teams could provide the raw firepower needed to break through enemy defenses. Chen found herself working closely with Kane, and she was impressed by the alien commander's adaptability. Despite her species' preference for careful planning and calculated risks, Kane grasped the essential chaos of human tactical thinking and began incorporating it into her own strategies. Your people really are like the legends describe, Kane observed as they reviewed the final attack formations. You don't just refuse to surrender. You refuse to accept reality when it doesn't suit you. Reality is overrated, Chen replied. Some of humanity's greatest victories came from refusing to accept what everyone else considered inevitable. The Devourer reinforcements arrived exactly when human intelligence had predicted, dropping out of hyperspace in 3 massive waves. 5,000 ships, more than had ever been assembled in a single fleet. They moved with perfect coordination toward the Coalition/human defense line, their dark hulls creating a shadow against the stars. All ships, this is Admiral Chun. Her voice broadcast across both human and Coalition frequencies. Today we fight not just for our survival, but for the survival of freedom itself. The enemy thinks they know us, thinks they can predict our actions. Let's prove them wrong. Operation Broken Arrow is a go. All units, execute your orders. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Coalition ships fought with a new ferocity, inspired by their human allies, and emboldened by tactics that emphasized aggression over caution. Human vessels dove into the thick of combat, trading damage with Devourer ships, and creating the chaos necessary for the boarding operation to succeed. Chun watched from her command center as specially modified human assault ships, protected by Coalition energy shields and guided by Etherian navigation specialists, punched through the enemy line toward their target. A massive Devourer dreadnought that sensors indicated was coordinating the enemy fleet's movements. Boarding teams away, reported Captain Martinez, commander of the assault vessel Thunderstrike. Pods are away. Estimate boarding contact in 30 seconds. What followed was the most dangerous 30 seconds of Chen's career. Everything depended on human Marines managing to not only survive inside an alien vessel, but to somehow take control of technology that was centuries ahead of their own. If they failed, the entire combined fleet would be destroyed, and 2 civilizations would fall. Contact! Martinez's voice crackled over the comm. We're inside their ship. beginning assault on what looks like their command center. These things are big, Admiral. Really big. Through the static and chaos of the comm channel, Chun could hear the sounds of combat. Energy weapons, explosions, and the shouts of Marines fighting for their lives in an alien environment. The minutes stretched like hours as she waited for word from the boarding teams. "Admiral," came Martinez's voice, strained but triumphant. "We've got it. We've taken their command center, and our tech teams are interfacing with their systems now. Dr. Patel says she can access their command network, but she needs more time." "How much time?" Chin asked, watching as her fleet continued to trade devastating blows with the Devourer forces. 20 minutes, maybe 30. These systems are incredibly complex. Chin looked at the tactical display. At their current rate of losses, they had maybe 15 minutes before their defensive line collapsed. "Dr. Patel," she said, activating the ship-to-ship channel, "you have 15 minutes to work a miracle." The response came back filled with static and determination. "Then I guess I better work fast." Dr. Priya Patel had always been told she was too stubborn for her own good. Her professors at the Terran Science Academy had warned her that her tendency to refuse to accept impossible as an answer would get her into trouble. As she crouched inside the command center of a hostile alien warship, surrounded by technology that defied human understanding while explosions shook the deck beneath her feet, she was beginning to think they might have had a point. The Devourer Command Center was a cathedral of dark metal and pulsing energy conduits. The architecture was both organic and mechanical, as if the ship had been grown rather than built. Alien interfaces lined the walls, their surfaces covered with symbols that shifted and changed even as she watched. The air itself felt heavy, with electromagnetic fields that made her skin tingle and her equipment readings fluctuate wildly. "Talk to me, Doc," came Captain Martinez's voice from across the chamber, where he and his Marines were setting up defensive positions. "How much longer do you need?" Patel wiped sweat from her forehead as she worked at her portable interface station, cables snaking from her equipment to various alien control panels. "These systems are incredible, Captain. They're using quantum processing at a level we've only theorized about. Every calculation is performed in parallel across multiple dimensional states. It's like trying to understand a symphony by listening to a single note. Can you break their codes or not?" "I'm not breaking codes," Patel replied, her fingers flying over her keyboard as she attempted to map the alien network architecture. "I'm trying to learn an entirely new language while the teacher is actively trying to kill me. Their communication protocols aren't digital, they're quantum biological. Each ship isn't just connected to the network, it's actually part of a larger organism." The implications of that discovery sent chills down her spine. The Devourers weren't just using advanced technology, they were advanced technology. Each ship was essentially a living being connected to all the others through quantum entanglement. No wonder they moved with such perfect coordination. "Contact front," shouted Sergeant Kim from the chamber's entrance. "They found us. Multiple hostiles incoming." Patel tried to block out the sounds of combat as Marine weapons clashed with Devourer technology. She had perhaps 10 minutes before they would be overrun, and she was barely beginning to understand how the alien systems functioned. The quantum biological nature of their network meant that simply hacking into it wouldn't work. She needed to somehow convince the system that her inputs were legitimate biological commands. An idea struck her, crazy and desperate, but potentially brilliant. Humans were biological beings too, and while their neural patterns were completely different from the Devourers, the basic principles of bioelectric communication might be similar enough to fool their systems. She pulled a neural interface headset from her equipment pack and began modifying it with components salvaged from the alien control panels. "Doc, what are you doing?" Martinez asked during a brief lull in the fighting. "Something stupid," Patel replied, fitting the modified headset over her skull. "I'm going to try to interface directly with their network. If this works, I might be able to take control of their fleet. If it doesn't work, it'll probably kill me." "That's insane. There's no way to know what that technology will do to a human brain." "Captain, we're about to lose this battle, which means we're about to lose everything. Sometimes insane is the only option left. Before Martinez could stop her, Patel activated the interface. The world exploded into chaos as her consciousness was suddenly connected to a network spanning thousands of ships. She could feel the Devourer fleet mind, vast and alien and utterly without mercy. It was like being caught in a tsunami of pure thought, each wave threatening to wash away her individual identity. But humans, she reminded herself, were remarkably good at being stubborn in the face of overwhelming odds. Instead of fighting the alien network, she let herself be carried along by its currents, learning its patterns and rhythms. Gradually, she began to understand the structure of the collective consciousness that controlled the Devourer fleet. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Every ship was an extension of a single vast intelligence, each crew member a neuron in a brain the size of a solar system. Their purpose was simple and absolute: consume all other life to fuel their own expansion across the galaxy. They had done this countless times before in other galaxies, leaving nothing but dead worlds in their wake. But as Patel explored the network, she discovered something the Devourers hadn't anticipated. Human neural patterns were chaotic compared to their orderly collective consciousness. Her thoughts created ripples in their network, introducing randomness and uncertainty into their perfectly coordinated system. It was like dropping a handful of sand into a precision clockwork mechanism. "Doc," Martinez's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Your vitals are going crazy. We need to disconnect you." "No," Patel managed to say, though speaking felt like trying to shout underwater. "I can see their fleet network. I can access their command protocols. Just give me a few more minutes." She dove deeper into the alien system, her consciousness racing along quantum pathways that connected thousands of ships. The Devourer network was beginning to recognize her presence as an anomaly, sending security protocols to isolate and eliminate the foreign influence. But Patel was ready for them. Human hackers had been dealing with security systems for centuries, and while the technology was different, the principles remained the same. Every security system had weaknesses, and every network could be compromised if you understood its structure well enough. She began introducing carefully crafted commands into the network, disguising them as routine maintenance signals. The first sign that her plan was working came when a group of Devourer fighters suddenly broke formation and began attacking their own capital ships. Then, an entire squadron of destroyers went dark, their crews apparently confused by conflicting orders from the network. Chaos began to spread through the Devourer fleet as Patel's neural patterns corrupted their perfect coordination. "Admiral Chun," she somehow managed to communicate through her headset's radio, "I'm in their network," beginning shutdown sequence on their command and control systems. Chen's voice crackled back over the comm channel. "Outstanding work, Doctor. How long can you maintain control?" "Not long. Their security systems are adapting to my presence. But I can give you a window of opportunity. Maybe 30 minutes before they lock me out completely. That'll have to be enough. All ships, this is Admiral Chun. The Devourer's coordination is breaking down. Execute attack pattern Omega. Hit them with everything we have while their defenses are compromised." What followed was the most spectacular reversal in military history. The combined coalition and human fleets tore into the confused and disorganized Devourer forces with devastating effect. Ships that had been nearly invulnerable when operating as part of their collective network became vulnerable when forced to fight as individuals. Human tactics, with their emphasis on chaos and unpredictability, proved perfectly suited for exploiting the breakdown in enemy coordination. Patel maintained her connection to the Devourer network for 28 minutes, using every trick she'd ever learned about system manipulation to stay ahead of their security protocols. She watched through thousands of electronic eyes as coalition ships pressed their advantage, destroying Devourer vessels faster than they could adapt to the new situation. But the effort was taking its toll. Human brains weren't designed to interface with technology at this level, and she could feel her neural pathways beginning to overload. When the Devourer's security systems finally succeeded in isolating and ejecting her from their network, the disconnection hit her like a physical blow. She collapsed to the deck of the alien command center, her headset smoking and sparking around her temples. Martinez was at her side immediately, checking her vital signs while his Marines maintained their defensive perimeter. "Doc, are you alive?" Patel opened her eyes, surprised to discover that she still could. Her head felt like someone had used it for target practice, but her neural implants indicated no permanent damage. "I'm alive." Did it work? Martinez helped her sit up and pointed to a nearby display screen that showed the tactical situation. The Devourer fleet was in complete disarray, ships fleeing in all directions as Coalition and human forces pressed their attack. What had been an organized invasion force was now a scattered collection of individual vessels running for their lives. "It worked, document. You've just saved 2 civilizations." The aftermath of the battle was a chaos of a different sort. Coalition medical teams worked alongside human medics to treat the wounded, while engineering crews from both fleets collaborated on ship repairs. The cultural exchange was fascinating to observe. Species that had been isolated for millennia suddenly working side by side with legendary beings they had thought were myths. Admiral Chun found herself in the unusual position of being treated as both a military leader and a living legend. Coalition officers approached her with a mixture of professional respect and obvious awe, while their crews stared openly at human personnel as if they expected them to perform impossible feats at any moment. "The final count is in," reported Commander Kane as she joined Chun on the observation deck of the Indomitable. "We destroyed or disabled over 4,000 Devourer ships. The surviving vessels have fled back toward their home galaxy, and our long-range sensors show no signs of regrouping." Chun nodded, satisfied with the outcome, but already thinking about the future. "They'll be back eventually. Probably better prepare next time. We need to be ready for them." "About that," Kane said carefully, "the Coalition Council has been discussing our situation. We would like to extend an invitation for humanity to join the Galactic Coalition. Our combined strength would be formidable, and your tactical expertise would be invaluable for our mutual defense. I appreciate the offer, Commander, but humanity has some trust issues when it comes to large political organizations. We prefer to maintain our independence. But surely you understand the benefits of cooperation. Your species has so much to offer, and we have technologies that could benefit your people." Chun smiled, but her expression remained guarded. "Tell me something, Commander. Before this battle, how did the Coalition handle conflicts? What was your standard approach to warfare?" Kane thought for a moment before responding. "We emphasize calculated strategies designed to minimize casualties and achieve objectives with maximum efficiency. We used overwhelming technological advantages to force quick surrenders rather than prolonged conflicts." "And how did that work against the Devourers?" "It didn't work at all. Their technology was superior to ours, and they seemed immune to conventional strategic thinking." "Exactly. You fought the way civilized people fight, rationally, efficiently, with consideration for the cost in lives and resources. But humans don't fight that way. We fight like barbarians because sometimes barbarism is what wins wars." Chun turned to face Kane directly, her expression serious. "The Coalition is a remarkable achievement. 43 different species working together in peace and prosperity. But that same cooperation is also a weakness. You've become predictable, comfortable. You've forgotten how to be dangerous. And you think humanity can teach us to be dangerous again. I think humanity will always be dangerous, and that's exactly why we can't join your coalition. The galaxy needs at least one species that doesn't play by the rules, that refuses to surrender when surrender is logical. You need us to be unpredictable." Kane was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. "So what are you proposing? An alliance, not a membership. Humans remain independent, but commit to responding when existential threats arise. You get access to our tactical innovations, and our willingness to do what others consider impossible. We get access to coalition resources and intelligence. But both sides maintain their autonomy. The Council might not approve such an arrangement. They prefer formal treaties with clear obligations. Chin's smile became predatory. Then, maybe it's time the Council learned that not everything in the galaxy can be organized into neat categories. Some of us are meant to stay wild. 6 months later, the Treaty of Nexus Prime established the formal relationship between the Terran Defense Force and the Galactic Coalition. It was unlike any diplomatic agreement in Coalition history, informal, flexible, and based more on mutual respect than legal obligations. Human ships began appearing at Coalition worlds, not as conquerors or members, but as allies who could be called upon when conventional solutions failed. The psychological impact was immeasurable. Across 43 different species, children grew up knowing that somewhere in the galaxy, the legendary humans were watching and waiting. Pirates thought twice before raiding Coalition shipping lanes, knowing that human vessels might respond with tactics that defied all military logic. Potential invaders reconsidered their plans when intelligence reports mentioned the possibility of human intervention. Dr. Patel became something of a celebrity in both human and Coalition space, the first being to successfully interface with Devourer technology and live to tell about it. Her techniques led to advances in bioneural computing that revolutionized technology across multiple species. But she remained proudly human in her refusal to accept limitations, continuing her research into impossible problems that more cautious scientists avoided. Commander Kane, promoted to admiral in recognition of her role in the victory, became the Coalition's primary liaison with human forces. She established the first diplomatic protocols for working with a species that seemed to thrive on chaos and unpredictability. Her reports to the Coalition Council often read like adventure novels rather than military documents, filled with accounts of human tactics that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. And Admiral Chun? She returned to human space with her fleet, satisfied that they had established the proper relationship with their galactic neighbors. Humanity would remain independent and unpredictable, a force that could be called upon when the impossible needed to be accomplished. They had stepped out of legend and into reality, proving that sometimes the best defense against overwhelming odds was an unwillingness to accept that the odds mattered. The Devourers would return eventually. Everyone knew that. But next time, they would face not just one species fighting for survival, but an entire galaxy that had learned the value of having a few barbarians on their side. The legends had become reality, and reality had become so much more interesting. Years later, when young beings across 43 worlds asked their elders about the humans, the answer was always the same. They're exactly like the stories say. They refuse to surrender. They thrive in impossible situations, and when all hope is lost, they find a way to win. And thank the stars they're on our side. The myths had become real, and the galaxy was a more dangerous place because of it. But dangerous as humanity had proven time, and, again, was sometimes exactly what the universe needed.